This is Patricia Windrow at the Cable Easel, bringing you a program that's devoted to painting and drawing from life. Today, it's a celebration of spring, having brought in some locally blooming jonquils found by in the garden of my sister who lives in Babylon, and there they are, the first little fellows that pop up and bloom to tell us that winter is almost over. And so, because I always work from life, it means that I must find things that are today. And so at this beginning of the season, I'm going to begin, as I always do, transferring the third dimension to the second dimension, which is the flat canvas. I do it by drawing first, always trying to claim and that in order to paint, you must know how to draw. So I assume that the people who are interested in seeing this as an instructional program do in fact draw. If you're here to watch me, if you're watching me purely for entertainment, that's fine too. But there are certain steps that take place that could in fact prove to be a little bit tedious. But anyway, here's the way I'm going to lay out this particular, and I'm going to work, I've tinted the canvas ahead of time because to use time to paint a flat canvas in the back can't be done in a short period of time. So I've tinted it first. I'm going to lay out the placement of the flowers. That should be fairly obvious. I'm using some tinted turpentine, tinted it with white, and I'm merely placing the flowers. These are things that ought to be known for people who are beginning from scratch and saying that it is intimidating working from life. Actually, working from life means that you've got all the information right there in front of you and you don't have to guess at anything. So far from being intimidating, it is very revealing, and it's also it's what makes for improvement in painting at all times. Proportion is a problem, and so you have to be able to experiment with points of departure and points of reference. There are times when you want to go past the canvas, but I usually find that florals that go past the canvas are less interesting than the ones that can contain the entire story in the one canvas. Which means that if this leaf that I'm putting in here now goes a little bit beyond it because it's taller, the creative process means that I can in fact simply shorten that leaf if I want to include it in the entire composition. These are liberties that you take in any creative process if you make it fit the way you want it to. It's not taking away from the fact that you're working from life, it is merely altering it just a little bit as you go along. Pardon me. So, with a general layout such as this is, you begin to draw the flowers. And I'm going to place the vase, which my point of reference is that this flower goes past the wall of the vase, and therefore I know just about where this vase is going to end. This takes a certain practice, there's no doubt about that. I would hate to think that anybody would think that this is as easy as possibly it appears to be, but anything that you begin is worth the effort of trying to make it to improve it. So when I'm using a flower, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flowers and 2 buds, and maybe 4 buds, they must be drawn. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm going to be doing right now, placing the yellow center part to give me some idea, and also to give me some manner in which these petals are going to be behaving as they come out of the center. The confusion that people find themselves in painting florals is that there's so much going on. And the only advice that I can really give is you just do it one by one. You paint the portrait of each petal. That may sound like a tremendous amount of time to spend, but actually it's the only way that you can, in fact, do a realistic study of flowers is by doing it anatomically for each bloom. For instance, this one right here, which has a folding over petal, must be drawn just as it's seen, because this is the way you find out the structure of a flower, and also you never have the problem about figuring out how many petals there are, because if you do them one by one, you wind up doing as many as there are in front of you. The flower painting has been, probably ever since painting began, one of the favorite subjects of painters in all parts of the world. The most famous floral painters, of course, are the Oriental paintings of flowers. They are done in a different technique, but they are also done from life. And they're very faithful to the bloom itself. Then, of course, the French and their great flower painters have been at it for 100 years or more. The Americans brought floral painting a different dimension because of the new kind of flowers that were found here. And then there are contemporary modern painters that have been painting flowers on a different scale. Georgia O'Keeffe has been painted huge flowers for most of her life, and they've become very well known. She merely took a wonderful flower and it was extraordinary innovation to take the flowers and do very careful renderings of these blooms, only single blooms and very much enlarged. So I could mention the names of flower painters from everywhere. The Dutch, of course, did the most complex flower paintings by putting possibly close to 300 or 400 blooms in each study. So I could go on and on about the business of painting flowers, and it's a very important part of the business of painting. If you can paint the human figure and flowers, you're on your way to becoming what you might call a rather accomplished technician, to be able to decipher what you're looking at. And that's one of the challenges I find, deciphering all of these complex shapes. This is going to be almost a monochromatic study, which means a very limited color, because of the fact that they're all the same flower. There is no introduction of any pinks in here or anything. But that's also a challenge in itself, to see if you can make something interesting with just a few selected colors. Let me see, I need to replace this bud, and I need to replace this one that sticks out a little bit further than I originally planned. That's why you must draw from the very beginning. These are little trumpet-shaped things that have to be remembered as you're doing them. If the confusion about the drawing is intense, you realize that they are trumpet-shaped with little with petals that fan out. 5 of them. I believe it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 in some instances. So nature plays tricks on you sometimes. You think that there are 5, and then all of a sudden you find one that is maybe a different type species. And the decoration on the vase will come later. All right, I'm working with brush this time. Many times I work in palette knife, but this time I'm working in a brush. I have a nice clean palette here, full of the colors which I think I'm going to need. If I need any others, I, of course, you learn as you go along what colors you need. The jonquil appears to be white and yellow, but actually it's very pale yellow, extremely pale yellow with a touch of green in it, which I'm going to accomplish by introducing a very tiny amount of cerulean blue to give a greenish hue to the outer petals. They are not pure white. All right. The simpler the better. Simplify, simplify is the motto for painting of anything from life. Do not get yourself involved in what you might call a seed catalog rendering of a flower. It has to be accurate, but it can also be slightly interpretive. That maybe sounds contradictory, but you are not dealing with a camera. You want to have it painterly, to have the quality that you know it's a painting and that it's not a photograph. Therefore, you're going to have to be doing a different approach to detail. Now, obviously, if this petal is going to be 5-sided or 6-sided, I must respect the anatomy of that particular flower and put those in. But I also am going to pay attention to the fact that I need to have this look like a painting. Which means that, and as long as I've got the color on my brush, I'm going to continue on to the next bloom, because these flowers need to have shadows in the petals, and that can be a little bit complex as the time goes by. I didn't start with the yellow, the deep yellow, because I need to talk about the paleness and how you can work up to the brilliant colors. I'm hoping that the transmission of this can show you that I am in fact using pale yellow in these petals that actually may look white. But as soon as I get the other brilliant yellow on, I think these things will fade off and give the illusion that they are a very pale yellow with shadows. So counting on the fact that I have mixed the right color for these outer petals, I'm going to continue on with the flowers as I go around. And painting 8 or more blossoms in a painting of flowers is not excessive, especially that I just mentioned that the Dutch would use 300 and 400. But those paintings weren't done in an hour or a half an hour. They were done over a period of months, and they were composed. The flowers fade, of course, and there would be no way of being able to paint 400 flowers in one afternoon because they fade. So they were composed paintings, and the flowers were brought in and done individually. And if there is an opportunity for anybody in the viewing audience to get one of those books on flower paintings of the Dutch, you will find that many times the shadows don't make any sense because the paintings were done at different times and the flowers have different lighting on them. Never mind, they are classic and quite remarkable paintings, and a great deal is to be learned. I have thumbed over those books and seen the originals for years to teach me exactly how it is that you approach flower painting. The Japanese, of course, and the Chinese flower painting is different, and there are some wonderful programs on the air about, there's one young man that is a Japanese flower painter, and he's absolutely astonishing. And if you ever see it advertised, it's called The Art of Japanese Flower Painting, and he has a very short name, I think it's Yen, but it's a remarkable series of paintings of flowers, different, but he works from life, bless his heart. As you can see, this is all beginning to look almost a little bit like wallpaper because I'm going from one blossom to the other, but eventually it will all take form, and you'll see that the flower can become three-dimensional as the shadows are introduced. The reason that I'm doing these all at the same time is for the instructional value of telling people that if you get the color right, then use it up and don't go from one to the other. It also gives the opportunity of getting absolutely clear, clean colors if you don't keep changing the color all the time. So involving yourself in the putting on of the petals is a good technique, especially when you're dealing with flowers that are going to open and change. The business of painting from life means that you are subject to time. And not only, the best things, of course, are things that don't change over long periods of time. And onions, potatoes, and things like that remain constant a good deal of the time. But flowers are very versatile in time. They change, and they bloom and open, and, you know, their forms are vastly different in a very short period of time. So these are things to be considered and to be thought about when you get involved in flower painting. Get flowers and learn to draw them rather quickly, and then put them in as quickly as you possibly can before they change. I'm going to take a slight break now and adjust my palette. I need some very pale yellow on here, so I'll be right back. Don't leave us yet. Well, here we are back again. All I needed was a little lemon yellow, so there it is. Put it right on my palette right there, because we're dealing with yellow flowers. And actually, I'm using a very limited palette for me. I usually use a great deal more than what I'm using today. But it's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 15 colors, including the white. And so that sort of makes it an entirely different approach than the ones that we see on other programs that have 4 colors and white. So there is a certain glamour to using more colors, but it's also essential in flower paintings to have the colors that are needed, because after all, flowers are the thing that is so seductive about flowers is the color, as well as the scent. Well, I'm now going to be working with a little bit of shadow color, which is I've gotten it by doing a predominantly white, touch of cadmium yellow, some cerulean blue, and a little touch of alizarin crimson, oddly enough, and that's what's giving me this shadow color for white flowers. It's complicated to see, because the darkness of a flower changes according to the light in which it is. Sometimes this white petal can have a greenish tint, and other times it can have definitely a mauve or a pale fleshy tint. So it's a question of where it is. This studio lighting is giving this kind of a deep greenish tone to the shadowy colors, which is the reason that I work from life and try to duplicate exactly what I see in front of me, no matter what the lighting system is. Television tells me that you have to have brilliant lights, and that means that you eliminate a lot of dramatic lighting in some of these compositions, which of course you can deal with if you understand the mixing of color. Color, of course, mixing has always been a problem, because I'm afraid that whatever one learns in school, it never deals with the mixing of color. Colors are handed to you, and you use the red from the red jar and the yellow from the yellow jar. So mixing colors is a problem for the beginning painter. It can be overcome by experiment. It's just like all other endeavors and all other disciplines. You practice, and that's when you develop your own style of color mixing. As you can see, I'm going from one petal to the other because I've got the right color mixed, having mentioned that once before. This piece is going to be done, this particular study is going to be done in 2 segments. This is segment 1, because there's entirely too much to do, and it does not serve the purpose of instructional television if I run through it without giving you some very clear techniques on how one accomplishes a flower painting in depth using life models. So the tedium that may be involved in either painting these or watching somebody do them can only be compared to any lesson that has details. I think that history and science and math and all these other disciplines involve the same problem: the concentration on a particular subject for a particular length of time. I have no problem with it, and the fact that I'm not doing what you might call an entertainment program makes me feel very comfortable in just talking about these problems, and also the solving of the problems in flower painting. So with these shadows pretty much set, I think that now is the time to go in for the purity of the yellow tones. I'm using an absolutely pure yellow here, which is, no, I'm going to mix it with a little bit of cadmium. So it's called lemon yellow. Grumbacher puts these colors out. It is lemon yellow right here in the end, and a touch of the cadmium to get exactly the same color that I can see on the flower in front of me. I'm going to be doing the pale parts first, and then the shadow parts will come in later. These have got a brilliance of them. Well, I need a little bit of white in there, incredibly enough. I thought that they were all very pure. Here's the pale part of this yellow trumpet, And in order to keep you interested, I think I will mix the, no, I'm going to go from one to the other exactly the way I would do it in my own studio. This little fellow here has got only a very few sharply lit curlicues on the outer rim. So for the most part, these flowers, because they're lit this way, are in shadow. I mean, these the yellow parts are in shadow most of the time. But it's the brilliance of the yellow that is going to make the difference. This one is totally in shadow. Here we have some rather brilliant yellow coming into this bud and turning into shadow on the other side. Then this here has a sort of a rim of brilliance around the edge of it, and then the rest of it is in shadow because it's a trumpet that you're looking inside. All of these lovely permutations of shape and so on are what inspires people to want to do these flowers. And of course, flower paintings are very easy to live with. Most people who have them give them a prominent place in their home. All right, now I'm going to do the shadowy part. This is, I'm going to be trying yellow ochre for the dark part of these trumpets and see whether or not it works. There are times when you have to put the color up against the other one to see whether or not it's the proper marriage of the two. Yellow is very tricky as far as shadow color is concerned. It tends to be in many different shades. It can be in the yellow ochre shades, but it can also be in the green shades. And this is the part that is the identifying thing of this particular flower. I also have a little bit of green dead center of that, which looks like an unimportant detail, but it's got to be there in order to be recognizable as the kind of flower that it is. The little center one here that is dark and greenish is vital to the understanding of that flower. I also need to fill in here some of this petal on the side, which I failed to see before. No, actually it's all right. It's in there and it's catching some light, and it bulges out somewhat. All right, we've got one trumpet done. Let me find if I can see if that shadow color works down here as well. Well, maybe a touch of green in there will help it. Here is this shadowy one, which is almost all dark because it's facing away from the light, and you have to give some idea of whether or not this is going to give you the illusion of being looked at in shadow. Well, yes, I believe that probably works, and the camera work is quite remarkable when you consider that you have somebody in a control room who is trying to follow what is happening here and then accommodating me, and the camera has become my eyes. The wonderful part is that the person who is in the camera room is very young and starting out in this business and is showing a rather remarkable talent, being able to follow what I'm doing. It is not simple, it is actually very complex, and so I have a pair of eyes in another room, which is almost surrealistic in its own way. Matt, I believe, is his name, and he's doing a wonderful thing today. I think that this is showing that this cup, the cup of this flower, is indeed darker inside. Very, very interesting to see how these small details are going to be able to be understood as the painting progresses. There's a little brilliant piece coming right out here, and another one there that's just catching the light. The anatomy of these flowers is what I'm trying to pay attention to. All right, so the yellow ochre seems to be working rather well. And so we continue on to the next one, whereby all of these little trumpets are individually painted and not faking it, because they're right here posing for me. I must say that even though I know flowers and have known them for a long time, there would be no way in the world that I would be able to interpret this and know exactly what it is that I'm seeing. So once again, the possibly over-repeated lecture about working from life is in full swing right here with these 7 blossoms. Let's see, I have here, okay, now I'm going to go to this next one, and this, yes, okay. This has got a rim. This has a rim of lacy stuff, little lacy turns, almost like a cloth here on the edge. And it is then, the little lacy cloth is emphasized by putting the darkness of the inside of the flower. Let's see if that works. Well, somewhat. I've got to bring the brilliance of this little flower around here so that you can, there we are. All right. And the blending, of course, is only possible with the oils. A little person, a friend of mine who comes to me and shows me her work, was talking about acrylics yesterday when she came to see me, and she's having problems with acrylics because they don't blend. So I told her now is the time to decide once and for all to get into oils, because oils are the only ones that are going to afford you the ability to blend, such as you have to do, especially with flower painting. Well, it looks like the first section of this study of spring flowers has unfortunately come by much too quickly, and so I'm going to end the program now, halfway done. Be sure that you tune in on the next time this part 2 of my spring flower study is announced, and then you'll be able to see the conclusion of it. Thanks for watching. This is Pat Windrow at the Cable Easel. Keep your brushes clean and get out there and paint. Bye-bye.